Good. So if you have studied this graph, then you have perfectly seen that it's comparing more than 10 years of data of a long-term trial we have in Obregon on bed planting. It is comparing conventional till beds with residue incorporated, permanent beds with residue burned, permanent beds with 70% of the residue removed, and permanent beds with residue retained. Now, I want you only to look at the first 5 years. What you can see, first 5 years, no difference. So if I do a trial and I only do it for 5 years, I go to the politicians and I say, you can tell your farmers that they can do whatever they want. Poor farmer who chooses the red line, because from year 6 on, the thing collapsed. What is the red line? Burned. Are we surprised? It's again the same message. If we combine zero tillage or permanent beds with taking away or burning all the residues, we are heading towards disaster. Alright? Now, if you look, the top graph is permanent beds retaining all the residue. It is not much difference from the conventional tillage. I mean, the yields are not much different. Now, that's also a clear message. Why? I want you to remember, here I'm applying irrigation water. Now, how much water am I applying? Until the bed is wet. That means that it's not taking into account the water use efficiency. We are applying in each treatment like a farmer does. When a farmer applies water, he just sticks his finger in the bed and says, okay, the bed is wet, I stop. So, we are not looking at water use efficiency in the different systems. Why? Because it's difficult. Now I have somebody this year that measured all the input of the water and all the output of the water. In reality, that means that she was staying 24 hours awake to measure when the water came in and how many water goes out. So now we will have the data. But irrigation is masking the effect of the comparison between conventional tillage and conservation agriculture. Why? Because you're already controlling one important limiting factor, the one of moisture. Because you yourself are already putting the water. Okay? So, not much yield difference. But look at the second graph. The second graph is a result from a big farmer demonstration module, where we are planting the permanent beds when we can plant, and where we are planting the conventional beds when we can plant. The first slide was from an experiment, where that's why I would be very happy, it's strictly scientific. Yeah, so we are planting the same date, so a statistician cannot say me, oh, confounding factor of dates, etc. But as you know, with permanent beds, you have the possibility to go in much earlier, because you don't have to plow. So here, we are planting when we can plant with a certain system. You are looking at it as a system. And then you see, yes, there is some yield difference, but it's less than a ton. Permanent beds, conventional beds. But look at the next one. Production costs in Mexican pesos. So if you divide it by 10, you have it in US dollars. 6,365. 4,000, almost 5,000 pesos. This is a difference from around 130 US dollars per hectare, which results in, this is the return after variable costs. So I pay the cost first. This is what the farmer really gets in his pocket. This is what the farmer is looking at. Permanent beds, conventional beds. So the difference in yield is maybe small, but the difference in economical return is much bigger in permanent beds than in conventional beds. Okay? Now, what is the farmer interested in? Farming is an economical activity. We have to stop thinking about farming. I mean, from where I come in Europe, in Belgium, we have the tendency to think about farming like very romantic, you know. It is a farmer and he has wheat and he has 4 cows and 3 goats and you can go to the farm on vacation to relax, etc. But farming, in reality, is an economical activity. And if we propose to the farmer resource-conserving technologies, whatever you want, sustainability, good for the environment, good for the air, good for the soil, good for the water, but if it is not economically viable, the farmer will not apply it, because it's an economic activity. So what we are proposing has to be economically sound, or you will not be able to get adoption unless you start subsidizing, etc. But I mean, in sense, it has to be economical. Now, conservation agriculture has that unique combination of resulting in good environmental practice and at the same time being economical. I'm not saying it, these are data. You for yourself can judge. Okay, back to bed planting. Bed planting, conventional bed planting in other countries. Does it work? Now the best proof of something works is to look at different conditions where it's applied. Turkey. Beautiful wheat on beds, irrigated wheat on beds, planted on beds in Turkey, 3 rows, as you can see. Rain-fed wheat on beds in Turkey. Turkish planter. You see, principle is the same, but they are inventing their own specific characteristics. Beautiful bed shaper. Wheat in India on beds. This is a trainee, like you guys, and has now his full field with beds, wheat on beds in India. Barley on beds, planted on the flat, planted on beds. I don't know which one you would choose, but I would choose definitely this one. Lots more launching here. You can see the launching pressure is higher, and I think the plants don't look as good as they look there. Look, he's showing you much higher here, much lower there. Same variety, of course. Maize on beds, irrigated India. Soybean on beds. Transplanted rice on beds, transplanted rice on the flat. Also the rice looks much better on the beds. This is nice picture I like. It's India flowers on beds for seed production. For seed to sell. Those goes in those small little envelopes that you can buy in the supermarket to put in your garden. Bed planter from India, same principle. Okay, but on a different type of planter. Look how beautiful it's planting. And then wheat on beds in Bangladesh. Bangladesh again. Maize on beds in Bangladesh. Intercropping on beds. It's maize cotton on beds. Together. Transplanted rice on beds in Bangladesh. Nice, no? What's this? It's a planter that can be pulled by the Chinese tractors that are in Bangladesh. Now, what's the story behind the Chinese two-wheel tractors in Bangladesh? Why so many Chinese two-wheel tractors in Bangladesh? Years and years ago, Bangladesh, when Bangladesh is on the news, what has happened? Bangladesh floods every several years. No? Bangladesh is one of the typical countries that if it's on the news, it's because they have had a big flood and everything is on the water. So there was a big flood several years ago. Now, a problem with the flood was that all the cows, they were drowning. No? They could not. They saved the people, but the cows were drowning in the water. The water was until here, until there, and the cows died. So the government said that's a problem. How are we going to plant the next crop? So they imported the two-wheel tractors cheaply, without tax from China, and they developed a whole set of tools for those two-wheel tractors. And I think two-wheel tractors can be the perfect thing for controlled mechanization. We will come back to that. Bed planter, developed by Simi in Bangladesh for a Chinese two-wheel tractor. It's working. These are cloud beds, like I said. Potatoes, two-wheel tractor. Bed maker, two-wheel tractor. Wheat on beds planted in China.
My leader.
It's your leader. Exactly. Chinese bed planter. I don't know who developed it, but it's probably somebody you know. Pakistan. Pakistan bed planter. We don't beds in Pakistan. We don't permanent beds after rice. Look at the rice straw and look at the beautiful wheat crop that comes out on the beds after the rice. This is a zero-till planter with a straw chopper for Pakistan. So it's a planter that chops the straw and it pushes the straw back. Very intelligent. The straw was, of course, blocking to plant with those open teeth because there was no discs to cut. So intelligently, what do? They pick up the straw in front, goes through a chopper, and it comes back in the back. And in the meanwhile, it's planted. Nice solution, isn't it? That's invention. We planted in Iran. 3 rows in Iran. Can Iran? Now it will not surprise you that all those scientists that started this work, most of them passed through the training course or here or in Africa. Because the idea is from what you learned here, try it out. And then Genser picks up his suitcase, comes and visits the different places. Now I will have to pick up my suitcase, come and visit the different places where you are trying. Iranian bed planter. Again, the same principle, but with local tools. That's the idea. Don't copy, don't try to import the machine. Import the idea and put it on your local situation. This is a wonderful, beautiful picture, isn't it? Kazakhstan. Beautiful picture because of the mountains, but it makes it even a more beautiful picture because it's wheat on beds. Kazakhstan bed planting. Again, a bed planter modified for Kazakhstan. Afghanistan bed planting. Afghanistan, a big farmer day to look at the bed planting. Morelia, this is Mexico. Barley on beds in Mexico. Barley on beds and it's bigger, Morelia. Now, one key element when you do irrigation, and especially when you go to permanent beds, please prepare your field correctly. And one of the things, the key things for irrigated situation is laser leveling, especially if it are huge fields. I understand that in Ethiopia you cannot do laser leveling, but I mean for huge fields, for big fields, intensive agriculture, not even for big fields, for intensive agriculture, for irrigated intensive agriculture, where it's flat land, do laser leveling. Then, lots of times, before we go to permanent beds, we will have one cycle of very heavy tillage. To break the plow pen, break open the plow pen, laser level, make it equal, and then you make your permanent beds, and then you have perfect permanent beds to stay with them the rest of your life. Because as you've seen in the graph, this year I've harvested in Obregon the crop for 2007 in the trial that was started on permanent beds in 1993. 2 crops a year, so 1993 up to 2007, 2008, that is 24 by 2, that's 28 crops on the same beds, and they're still alive and kicking, and the yields are very high, and the yields are very good. Okay. But it is important to start off good prepared. Transplanted rice on beds in India, more transplanted rice on beds in India, and we go to rainfed situation. So this was irrigated. Operationalizing the principles of conservation agriculture, reduce tillage, crop rotation, leaving crop residue, but in an irrigated situation, flood irrigation, so we do it with permanent beds. Now rainfed. For rainfed, we do research in Simit in Toluca and in El Batan. You are here in El Batan. This is a climate for El Batan. Rain period starts in June, ends end of October. 550 millimeters of rain on average. But look at this. Potential evapotranspiration is almost higher all the time than the rainfall. So if the rain comes, it goes back into the air. And I think you feel it, because we have all been outside today, and you feel almost that the water is sucked out of your body while you're standing in the sun. Because we are at more than 2,000 meters altitude, so it's logic. At the same time, 550 meters of rain, it looks more or less okay, but it comes in very heavy showers. Actually, 2 times a year, I think almost, the down floor here or finance is flooded. They get water inside because it's such a heavy shower that we cannot get rid of the water, so then we get water inside the building. Okay? So heavy showers in the afternoon, so if we don't keep that water in the field, it will just drop, run off the field, go through the drain, and it's off to the ocean. Okay, we lose it. You have to keep the water in the field, and you have to protect it from evaporating back into the air. So the growing season length of growing season is from June up to the end of October for rain-fed crops. Okay. Soil classification. This is the soil profile. It's a cumulic phylum or a fine mixed thermic cumulic hapusto. So if you're calling tomorrow morning to your home country and they're asking you what you have learned today, you can say you have learned that the soil here is a fine mixed thermic cumulic hapusto, and they're definitely going to think you're doing very interesting and very important things. So what it basically means, it means that it is a soil with a high carbon content, relatively high clay. Also, that means that the results you're going to get from here, if we start off with the soil where we have less carbon in the soil, the results will be even more dramatic, because we're starting off here with a relatively fertile soil. Okay? Why? Because the soil was formed in the outer side of the lake where there was lots of biological activity. What are the characteristics of this area? We are talking about the non-equatorial, semi-arid, subtropical highlands, 2,240 meters above sea level. Limiting factors of the system, like I've already tried to tell you several times. It is of no use to go to some place, pick a solution and take it home before you know what the real problem is. How can we sometimes tend to formulate a solution, but we haven't even thought about the problem? First, analyze the limiting factors of the area where you want to start working. Limiting factors here are periodical drought, periodical water excess, wind and water erosion. We're talking about rain-fed agriculture, and the grain yield is less than 3 tons a hectare, and here I'm exaggerating because actually the grain yield is less than 2 tons per hectare for maize in the farms. So, what did we do in CIMIC? We developed a long-term sustainability trial, D5. It's a trial that we have not planted yet, but we will be planting it. Now what I like here is an aerial photograph. And already from the aerial photograph, I mean, if this whole area would look the same like there, then I could pack my suitcase and go home now, because every treatment would be the same. But it's definitely not the case. You see already dramatic difference in color of the different plots. And the funny thing is, if you go tonight to Google Earth and you look for CIMIC, the easiest thing is look for this and you will immediately find it. Because you can see through Google Earth, you can see the D5 trial. What is the relevance of the research we do in Albertan? All the green areas are relevant. So you tell me, that's why I think you're right in the right position here, because what we are doing here is relevant for the highlands in Ethiopia, for the whole highland area in Ethiopia. But look, there's a whole area where this is relevant. Also this area, North Africa, through even the rain-fed areas in Asia and China. Okay? So this is what it's about. It's about planting 0-tier rain-fed maize in 2-week straw. We have been doing it the last days now. Planting 0-tier rain-fed into maize straw, but on the flat. You see here we are planting on the flat. You were asking for that. 8 rows of wheat on the flat after maize. This is the D5 trial. Is this conservation agriculture? No, it's not. It's direct seeded maize, but there are no residues. And look at this plot. This plot is perfect for when the minister comes. He can put his helicopter in the middle of this and he has a perfectly smooth spot to land the helicopter. So it is perfect soil quality for a helicopter landing place. but it's the worst soil quality if you want to produce a crop. Zero-till rain-fed maize, and you still see the stubble from wheat when it's bigger. Now look at this. What's this? This is conventionally tilled wheat where we incorporated the residue from the previous crop. The weed control is exactly the same in all the plots. Compare this plot with this one. Where do you see the most weeds? Conventional tillers. This is actually the best comparison. Huh? This is the same day. Where do you see weeds? Full of weeds, no weeds. Okay. Zero-till maize planted into wheat residues. Zero-till rain-fed wheat without a previous crop residue. Is this conservation agriculture? No, it's not. This is it. Zero-till rain-fed wheat with previous crop residue. Look at, beans love permanent beds. If there is something a bean loves, it's permanent beds, and especially because it's zero-till, good structure, good infiltration. You put it on permanent beds, no wet feed, and it loves it. Even zero-till in the flat, beans like zero-till very much. This is zero tillage without residue. I use same fertilizer, same variety, same herbicide control, everything the same. Only difference, I'm leaving residue. I get this. Same day. Maize, zero-till without residue. Same variety, same rainfall, same sun, everything exactly the same. Only difference, leaving residue. I get this. You can choose what you want. I know the one I want. Okay. Of course it's dramatic, but if we compare zero-till with conventional tillage, especially look at the weeds. This wheat is already yellow. Here, if you look carefully, I don't know if you see it on the screen, but you see still some green color. What does this mean? This grain is already completely ripened. The growing season is finished. Here, the growing season is not finished. It is still taking advantage of the moisture. It is still producing. It is still busy. This will give you higher yield than that one. If you look at the maize and you know a bit about the maize crop, compare this maize with conventional till. The difference is not as dramatic, but still there is a difference. If we look at the yield results, continuous maize zero-till, removing the residue 2.6 tons a hectare. Rotation maize wheat zero-till, keep the residue. Conservation agriculture 5.3. Now that's more than double. You more than double the yield just by doing the right agronomical practice. Now there is no breeder in the room, so I can easily say it. What I'd like to say to breeders then is, give me a next variety that has a yield improvement of 100%. If we don't put the varieties on the right agronomic conditions, you have 2.6 tons. If you go for wheat, same effect, 3.5, 5.5. If you compare zero-till with conventional tillage, what the farmer is doing, maize, conventional tillage, removing all the residue, 3.6 compared to 5.3. Again, I know what I will choose. Now, if we compare systems, these are all zero-till systems. This is all conservation agriculture. This is conservation agriculture, full residue retention. Here we are taking away some of the straw. Here we are also taking away some of the straw. Look, the yields are the same. So there is scope for taking away half of the residue. Now it's even better. If you compare that taking away half of the residue, and you compare the amount of residue you are taking away in the conventional practice, conventional tillage, maize, taking away all the residue, and you compare it to zero-till, maize wheat, where you take away half of the residue in kilos, in ton, you're taking away the same amount. although in this system you're still giving fertility to the soil. Of course, the first 5 years, probably if your soil is very degraded, you have to put and leave all the residue there. In Ethiopia, you will have to leave in the first years all the residue, because the soil is so degraded that you have to give it something to, you have to restore it. But once the fertility comes back, once the maize catchment got the right moisture again, once it was up and the source, the water is sprinkling again, then you have built up the biomass, you have built up your fertility platform, then you can take away part of the residue and be harvesting the same amount as what you were trying to harvest in a degraded soil where you were taking away all of it. Average yield for a farmer doesn't mean anything. What the farmer wants is yield stability. He wants, if 1 year is a bad year and the next year is a spectacularly good year, then together it's an average year. Or if 1 year is average and the next year is average, on average, it will give the same value, but for the farmer it is not the same. So let's look at yield stability. This is the relative yield compared to the highest yielding. This is the year. Here we have zero tillage for maize, here we have conventional tillage for maize. Here we have zero till for wheat, here we have conventional tillage for wheat. Okay, zero till maize. Maize, wheat, zero till, keeping all the residue. The open dots is when you take away the residue. Bang, falls down. But the most important thing, this is conventional tillage. Whatever you do in conventional tillage, none of them is stable. Some years one is good, some years the other is good. Now what is underlying there? Although in conventional tillage you put the residue, you plow it in, you are not getting the full benefit of the residue. So actually if you're asking your farmer to plow in the residue, you're taking away from him an income without getting from that income, from that residue, the full potential. Do you see what I mean? Again, if we only leave residue, but we don't combine it by zero till, it is not going to get the full out of it. So people that say, that do a statistical analysis and that say it's about zero tillage, it's not about zero tillage. It's about residue. It's not about residue. It's about the combination of zero tillage and residue retention, and they're both working together is what's going to give you the effect. Look at wheat. First 5 years, yes, you need stabilization period, but from then, bang, stable yields in maize, wheat, zero till, keep all the residue. Take away the residue, your yield potential drops dramatically, and the same thing, conventional goes up and down. Now you see the dots are much closer with wheat. It's because wheat is a more noble crop than maize. Okay? Wheat, whatever you do with it, it still gives you something. While maize is a much more demanding crop. So if you don't put maize under the right conditions, it's not going to give you much. Wheat is a crop that stands more marginal conditions. Income. Very important. This is the zero. So if you drop below the zero, you lost money that year. Farmer practice, maize, wheat, conventional tillage, taking away the residue. Now, taking away the residue means you sell the residue on the market. So you get an income from the residue, you're right? That's what the farmer does. Here in Mexico, year 1, farmer loses money. Year 2, farmer loses money. Year 3, farmer loses money. Year 4, farmer loses money. Year 5, we're lucky, we gain a bit. Year 6, we lost a bit. Year 7, again a bit of gain. Year 8, we lost. Year 9, we got a bit. Zero tillage, maize, wheat, keeping all the residue. I'm not selling the residue on the market anymore, so I'm losing an income. First year, I gained a bit, I gain. It's going up. Fertility is building up, yield is building up. Although I'm not selling the residue in the market, I'm getting more money in the pocket. Now, of course, you have to take into account this is an economical analysis based on the long-term trials. What I'm not taking into account is when a farmer takes the residue, gives it to an animal, and that animal is, of course, it's a risk. I mean, it's a risk stabilizer, okay? Maybe that animal has more value. What we have used here is the value of the straw on the market. We are not taking into account the sociological effect of having an animal, because maybe that animal, you can then sell it, or it can be important to have it, because then you can give it as a gift during a wedding or whatever. So that's not taken into account. So the first one to agree that this is a very preliminary economic analysis. So you have to ask the economic people from here in the corner to do a better one. But already this is pointing out something, okay? So, wheat on permanent beds with residue retention. Beautiful, no? Rain-fed wheat on permanent beds. Look at this. Maize planted on permanent beds with residue retention. This is the advantage of tight ridges. Permanent beds, if you put the tight ridges, are an active drainage and an active water harvesting system. Because you have a tippet bucket system. If the water becomes too high, it floods over and it goes out. But still, you can harvest the water, you can keep it in the field without affecting the roots of the crop. Wheat on permanent beds with tight ridges without residue. So we remove the residue. This soil doesn't look that happy. Now you can compensate a bit for taking away all the residue by putting tight ridges. But actually, it's not really good. But what you can do is you can put tight ridges and take away half of the residue. Because the tight ridges will help you a bit, so that gives you scope to take away half of it. It's exactly what it says here. It's a bit complicated, but this is conventionally tilled beds. This is from H9, the trial we were planting yesterday, wheat, you remember. Permanent beds where you retain all the residue, then you don't have to put tight ridges, because the residue is going to work as a tight ridge. But if you want to take part of the residue away, then you can take part of the residue away and you put tight ridges, then you can compensate a bit for the fact that you're taking away part of the residue. Okay? You get a slight yield increase by putting tight ridges. But the same message, if you combine permanent beds and you remove all the residue, if you put tight ridges or you don't put tight ridges, okay, you get a small effect, but it's not what we want. It's a bit complicated graph, but do you more or less grab the basic function? So tight ridges combined with partial residue, combined with permanent beds, perfect. But if you put permanent beds and you take away all the residue, although you put tight ridges, it's not going to fully compensate. You need the residue there. To look at. To look at is high rainfall, high altitude. So there the beds have more function as drainage. Beds on narrow beds, wheat on narrow beds, wheat on broad beds. Beautiful. Narrow beds, broad beds. Normal beds. Broad beds. Yeah. This is the zero-till planter for rain-fed conditions. Now we're going to go again, scope of the world. Where is rain-fed zero-tillage used? Brazil. Zero-till planter from Brazil. Argentina. Argentina. Cotton, zero-till after wheat in Argentina. Typical chopper, so the only thing it does is it puts down the residue. Typically used in Brazil. Cutting roller knife. Same picture. Same thing but a bit differently developed. Australia, to make raised beds. These are raised beds, tilled raised beds, but they are raised beds for vertical management in rain-fed conditions in Australia. Now they make now the next step, and they have permanent, broad, raised beds in rain-fed conditions in Australia. They're making the broad beds in Australia, planting the beds in Australia. Again, a picture from Australia, but now on broad, permanent beds You see? But there is stubble from the year before. It's coming out beautifully, 6 rows. Look at this canola on broad permanent beds. Beautiful crop. Produced till planter. And that's why it's a skip row, so it means it's not really a bed planting, but we leave a row open. Zero till planting, but you leave here, so it's the same trafficability, only you don't have the raised beds. So it's a skip row, so at the end you have a row open here, it's like as if it is a raised bed, but it's not really a furrow here, no? It's an open space. You have seen the biggest planters in the world in Brazil. And I've seen in Brazil the smallest planter in the world. Look at this is just an animal planter. Seed, fertilizer, perfect. Ethiopia? Can work, isn't it? Same thing, a roller knife, but pulled by bullocks. No problem. Same idea. Bolivia, small planter, can work. This is nice, no? Walking planter for Brazil, it can. There we go, my dear fellows. Chinese 2-row zero-till maize planter. Chinese planter, but bigger now, for bigger areas. But again, same principle. Seed, fertilizer, dropped, but you see it's based here on T openers. It's fine. Like we said, this can work maybe better, but we have to work with what we can find. And it's possible. Another planter made in China, it's possible. What I want to show you is, it's not possible, I don't take for an answer. Okay? I don't have the right machinery, I don't take it for an answer. We didn't have the right machinery in Ethiopia, and still we did it with the local Maresha. It's all about what's in the head. It's all about what's in the head. I don't have the right machinery. Just the planting matraka. We have how many are there now from those matrakas in Ethiopia? I have imported several of them for the Maizekzek and to plant maize, to plant beans. I mean, it's wonderful. People even like it to plant in a conventional situation. But I have to tell you one thing. It looks really simple. But if you give it the first time to people, it takes them half a day to learn how to work with it. Why? Because you have to open it, put it into the ground, close it, drop the seed, open it again, and pull it out. And I don't know why, but half of the people do this, put it in the ground, clog it with soil, put it out, and it's a big mess. But once you know how to work with, it's really, really quick. Yeah? But if you have the system, there is your perfect system for zero tillage. Ethiopia, using a Maresha to make the beds. Now this is a funny story. You see that people are bringing the straw back. Now what had happened was, you have to know there's a guy called Yamnisa in Ethiopia. And he has a huge respect from the local community because he has done a lot for them. And this is within an integrated scheme of integrated watershed management, where they close an area for free grazing and where they're doing cut and carry, so that the whole biomass of that watershed can come up. Now, within that watershed, within that philosophy of integrated watershed management, we are putting conservation agriculture. Now, they were seeing that we were leaving the residue. So the neighboring farmers, because they know that if Yamnisa proposes something, that it gives them a benefit, they actually came back and they put the residue back on their own fields also. Because they know that it could be worth it. And because it's an area where there's no free grazing anymore, they can do it. Of course, in the free grazing areas, it's going to be a bit more difficult. This is the result. The traditional wheat, permanent beds on wheat in the Maizekzek catchment in Ethiopia. And now we have, what have we put it? Wheat, chickpea, no. Wheat, grass pea, what else? Teff, no? Teff actually wasn't that good on the beds. Now you remember Teff was so-so, Teff we were a bit struggling, but the rest was really good, no? China. Another planter from Brazil. Another planter from Brazil. Yes, you're going to be sick of all the planters, but it's important to see. Lantern from India. Now India is funny, no? In India they started with the turbo seeder, and then they have the happy turbo seeder, and now I don't know what they have, because they have the happy turbo seeder, the turbo seeder, and the very happy turbo seeder, and the super happy very but what the idea is, every time, okay, a machine is ready, but the machine is never ready. You can always make it better. That's the idea. So they make it always better, but the problem is then you have no superlatives anymore to put on it. But anyway, the idea is there. These graphs are really important. These are the graphs of adoption of conservation agriculture in Brazil. It takes 10, 20 years. I mean, here in the year 72, 73, the first trial started. And it took really up to here, which is around 92, 93, before it took off. But then when it takes off, it becomes skyrocketing. This is for Brazil. This is for Argentina. Look how funny, it's exactly the same graph. Several years of trying, 77, 78, but from 1992, 1993, bang, it goes up like an exponential graph. Same thing for Paraguay. Same thing for Australia. Same thing for India, in the IGP. What does this mean? In Mexico, I think we are here. Now that means, poor guy that starts working 20 years, because he has to work 20 years without seeing any results. The one that comes here, so yes, it's going to be a tough time if you're the one starting with conservation agriculture in your country. But still, it is worth it. Okay? It's going to take time, but once it takes off, it takes off. And now tomorrow we will discuss what kind of schemes we can use, what we can learn from those countries in order to see how can we expand the technology, in what way do we have to do it. Okay? So don't get depressed if you think that you're going to have to wait 20 years. There are ways to do it. Okay? 10 years.